What's your name?
I'm Leah Barnaval.
How old are you?
14.
Do you think you could win the show?
I think that there's always someone better than you.
Okay, well, we wish you the best of luck.
Simon Cowell had seen everything. Or at least he believed he had. From tone D. hopefuls to world-class singers, he'd sat behind that glossy Britain's Got Talent desk for years, his sharp critiques cutting through the air like a blade. He was known for being brutally honest, a man whose raised eyebrow could shatter dreams and whose rare smile could make a career. The audience had grown used to his stern demeanor, his signature lean-back posture, and that cold, calculating stare that could size up a contestant before they even spoke a word. But what no one, not the audience, not the other judges, and not even Simon himself, expected was that one quiet 14-year-old girl would be the one to break through his famously impenetrable exterior, leaving him in tears in front of millions. The studio lights were blinding, the cameras relentless. It was another long taping day for the judges. Another line of nervous contestants, clutching their dreams like fragile glass. For most viewers, Britain's Got Talent was an entertaining spectacle, a mix of laughter, nerves, and the occasional jaw-dropping performance. But for the people standing backstage, it was far more than that. It was everything. Their one chance, their one moment. And for a teenage girl named Lily Hart, this was the day her life could change forever. She stood just beyond the curtain, trembling slightly, her heart pounding so loudly she could hear it echo in her ears. Behind her, stage hands whispered into headsets, while other contestants watched nervously. Lily kept her eyes fixed on the lights spilling across the stage floor where her entire future seemed to be waiting. Simon, meanwhile, sat back in his chair, arms folded, his expression unreadable. The previous act, a group of dancers who had tried to mix break dancing with opera, had left him less than impressed. His critique had been swift and merciless. He was tired. The audience could tell. Amanda Holden tried to keep the mood light, flashing her warm smile as the next contestant's name was announced. Alicia Dixon whispered something encouraging to David Williams, who chuckled softly. The room buzzed with the usual blend of anticipation and fatigue. Then the host's voice echoed across the theater. Please welcome to the stage, 14-year-old Lily Hart. From the shadows, Lily stepped forward. The audience offered polite applause as the small figure walked into the center of the stage. Dressed simply, blue jeans, a white top, and a pale lilac jacket. She looked like any other schoolgirl, except her hands were shaking slightly as she clutched the microphone. The judges watched her take her mark. Amanda smiled. Alicia nodded encouragingly. David gave a little wave, but Simon barely glanced up. His attention seemed elsewhere. He'd seen hundreds of shy teenagers over the years. Many had pleasant voices, but few had that spark, that commanding presence that silenced a room. To him, this felt like just another audition. The audience murmured immediately. Even Simon's eyes flicked upward for the first time. Nilancha, a song known for its soaring range, its demanding control, and especially its impossibly high notes, wasn't something a young girl usually dared to attempt. It was the kind of song that could either make a career or end an audition. In seconds, Simon raised an eyebrow. "That's a big song," he said flatly, his tone laced with quiet challenge. Lily hesitated again, looking out toward the audience. "It's my mom's favorite," she said softly. She passed away last year, and I wanted to sing it for her." A hush fell over the theater. The audience that had been casually murmuring a moment before now sat in total silence. Even Simon blinked, his sharp expression softening for the briefest second. On one of the front rows, a man was seen holding a young boy, Lily's little brother, who looked up at his sister with wide, hopeful eyes. The cameras caught it all. The nerves, the trembling lip, the honesty of a girl carrying a song not just for herself, but for someone she loved. Simon cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair. "All right, Lily," he said, his voice quieter now. "Whenever you're ready." The lights dimmed slightly. The orchestra track began, soft strings filling the vast theater with gentle echoes. Lily closed her eyes and took a deep breath. For one heartbeat, the room was perfectly still. Then she began to sing. Her first note wasn't loud, but it was pure, crystal clear. It floated through the air like a ray of light breaking through cloud. The audience leaned forward instinctively. The judges' faces shifted from polite attention to genuine surprise. Even Simon's pen, the one he used to jot down notes and critiques, stopped moving. His eyes were now fixed on the girl standing center stage. As Lily continued, her nerves seemed to melt away. Her voice grew stronger, richer. With each word, the melody filled the theater with something impossible to describe. Not just sound, but emotion. It wasn't the power of her voice that stunned the audience. It was the purity, the honesty. Each note carried something deeply human. Grief, hope, love, all woven together in a way that made everyone forget they were watching a talent show. Amanda's hand rose to her chest, her eyes glistening. "Alicia," whispered, "Wow," under her breath. Even David stopped joking and stared in awe. But it was Simon's reaction that told the story. He leaned forward now, elbows on the desk, watching her intently. The same man who'd been unimpressed ago was completely transfixed. His head tilted slightly, as if listening more closely to each rising note, each delicate shift in tone. Then came the first crescendo. Lily's voice climbed effortlessly, soaring through the air with breathtaking control. The audience gasped. You could almost feel the collective heartbeat of the room. Simon's lips parted slightly, the first crack in his famous poker face. He wasn't just impressed. He was moved. By the time Lily reached the second verse, something had changed entirely. She was no longer a shy teenager on stage. She was a vessel for something greater, a sound that felt almost otherworldly. Every line, every breath seemed to carry her mother's spirit with it. The audience didn't dare whisper or cough. It was as though everyone had been transported somewhere else, to a place where the only thing that existed was that voice. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. Alicia nodded slowly, visibly emotional. Even the stage hands at the Side were watching in stunned silence. Simon, who was usually the hardest to read, now had a look of disbelief, softening his features. His usual smirk had vanished. His expression had become human, vulnerable. He seemed to be studying her, not as a judge, but as someone experiencing something extraordinary. And then it happened. The moment that no one would ever forget. The high note, the one that separates the great from the legendary. Lily's body stilled. Her shoulders rose slightly. And then her voice climbed higher and higher past every expectation. The sound was flawless, shimmering with control and emotion. It filled the theater like sunlight pouring through stained glass. The audience collectively gasped. Cameras zoomed in on Simon just as his jaw dropped slightly, his eyes widening in disbelief. Lily held the note perfectly, her expression serene, her voice unwavering. The audience erupted even before she finished the song, applause echoing through the hall. But she didn't stop. She lifted her chin slightly, carried the melody through the final bars, and ended with a soft, heartbreaking whisper of a final note that left the theater utterly silent. The silence that followed was electric. No one moved. It was as if the air itself had stopped. And in that charged stillness, the cameras caught something truly astonishing. Simon Cowell, the man known for his stoicism and cynicism, blinking rapidly as a tear welled in his eye. Amanda turned toward him, stunned. Alicia covered her mouth, whispering, "Simon." But he didn't speak. His eyes were locked on Lily, who stood motionless on stage, her hands clasped tightly, her chest rising and falling from the emotion of what she had just done. For a moment, no one said a word. The applause hadn't started yet. The world seemed to be holding its breath. Then, a single tear rolled down Simon's cheek. The audience gasped. Cameras flashed. The crowd, once frozen in awe, now erupted into applause so thunderous it shook the room. Amanda rose to her feet first, clapping through tears. Alicia followed, standing with her hands over her heart. David let out a joyful cheer, shaking his head in disbelief. Lily's little brother in the audience jumped from his seat, tears streaming down his face as he clapped furiously. The entire theater was on its feet, but all Lily could do was smile shyly, tears forming in her own eyes. And at that moment, for the first time in Britain's Got Talent history, Simon Cowell couldn't hide his emotion. He wiped at his cheek quickly, trying to compose himself, but it was too late. The cameras had caught it all. The tear, the look of disbelief, and the quiet smile that followed. When the applause finally began to die down, Simon leaned toward the mic, his voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. "That," he said, his words slow and deliberate, "was extraordinary." The crowd roared again. Lily blinked, overwhelmed, whispering a quiet, "Thank you." Simon shook his head slightly, still stunned. "I didn't expect that. I genuinely didn't. You walked out here like a frightened little girl," he said, pausing as the audience hushed. "And you just delivered one of the best vocals I have ever heard on this stage." Amanda clapped through tears. Alicia nodded in Agreement, adding, "That was magical." David leaned into his mic, grinning. "You made Simon Cowell cry," he teased. And the audience laughed warmly, breaking the tension. Simon smiled. Embarrassed, but touched. "Well," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "she earned it." Lily laughed nervously, wiping her tears. The audience applauded again, cheering her name. And as she stood there smiling through her tears, even Simon seemed to forget the cameras, the show, the pressure, everything. In that moment, all that mattered was a young girl's voice and the way it had reminded everyone, including him, that true talent can still move the hardest of hearts. As the applause continued to thunder through the theater, the camera panned across the audience, faces stray with tears, people cheering, others simply standing frozen, still processing what they had just witnessed. Lily stood on stage, hands trembling around the microphone, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to catch her breath. She had just sung her heart out, but even now she couldn't quite believe the reaction. She looked out into the crowd, her gaze falling on her little brother, who was now jumping up and down with pure joy, waving his arms in the air. That sight alone was enough to break her. She smiled through tears, one hand pressed to her mouth completely overcome. Simon leaned forward, elbows on the table, still shaking his head in disbelief. He blinked, exhaled slowly, and then smiled. A genuine, unguarded smile, one that was rarely seen on that